Now I can. All right, everybody is coming in. So welcome to our Health Council chat today. Again, just drop your name, your affiliation, everything in the chat. That would be great. I'll give it all to you, Heather.
Cool, thank you. I will give people just maybe like 1 or 2 more minutes to hop on and then we'll get started. But hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today.
It has been such a busy morning with gatherings.
Okay, I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know, as Sam mentioned, there's a bunch of other stuff going on today, so we may have a few more people come in as other events wrap up, but we'll go ahead and get started. And if you were here not last week, but the previous week, some of this may be a little bit familiar, but instead of federal grants today, we're going to be talking about foundational grants and also GRO funds. And so I have a few announcements before we get started. Canva never lets me go ahead. Okay, so first we will do our land acknowledgement. The New Mexico Alliance of Health Councils humbly recognizes and acknowledges we are on unceded territory and ancestral lands of the original people of New Mexico's Pueblos, Apache nations, and the Navajo Nation. Together, we acknowledge the history of genocide, dispossession, colonization, and ongoing systemic iniquities while strengthening and respecting relationships with Indigenous peoples. We give thanks to the past, present, and future stewards of this land and respect all tribal nations' sovereignty. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous resiliency, self-determination, and self-governance of New Mexico's tribes and nations who are still here today. All right, and I know a lot of you have completed our multiple surveys that we've sent out multiple times so far, and we appreciate it very, very much. And just a reminder that when you complete all the surveys, you'll get a $25 gift card. And I know for those of you who have submitted all the surveys, those gift cards are going to be coming out soon. So keep an eye out for that. And if you haven't submitted your survey yet, please, please do so. We would appreciate it greatly because it's going to help us so much during the legislative session to have data on all the great work that you all are doing, that we can show them all the qualitative and quantitative data on all y'all's great work. All right, and so I don't know if Val is on and if she wants to share, but if not, I will share. We have several advocacy opportunities coming up next week. So the final legislative session is happening next week. So if we can all come together, use our collective voice to ask the state to reestablish recurring optimal funding for county and tribal health councils per HB 137. And so we have some slides on how you can get involved, and we will share all this information with you all as well. And there are links in all of these slides. But the first opportunity is to attend the last Legislative Finance Committee meeting. If you are here in Santa Fe, I know it's not possible for a lot of you, but if you are here in Santa Fe or are able to make it, it would be great if you could come and help advocate in support of county and tribal health councils. So there's a link to the agenda. And so those meetings are going to be next week, December 9th through the 13th in Santa Fe at the Roundhouse. Another way that you can become involved that takes no time at all is just signing our statewide letter of support, calling for the government to, again, reinstate recurring optimal funding for health councils to help leverage health councils for success in service of our communities. And we've got a letter, a link to the letter in this presentation, and also in the email that it has gone out. And that due date is next week as well, December 9th. And if at any point anyone has any questions, please let me know. I cannot see the chat, so if there's anything that pops up, please feel free to unmute yourself. But another way that you can advocate is to schedule a meeting with your district senator and representative to share the critical work and the meaningful impact that your health council is having in your community. You can share the work that you're doing, and you can also share the way that the health council has impacted you personally. And you can also write a letter of support to the governor and to legislative finance committee, and we have links to both the support letter and the contact list of senators and representatives per district that you're able to access in this presentation. All right, and last one, I know some of you have done this already as well, so we appreciate it very much. But if you're able to submit just a short video, 1 to 3 minutes, or a written testimonial talking about how your health council has made a difference in your life or in the lives of members of your community, that would be really, really impactful for us to share with legislators. So you can submit either your testimonial or your video to SAM by the end of the year. So you've got quite a bit of time to do that. So thank you so much for taking a stand with us in support of county and tribal health councils. We really, really appreciate all the work that you're doing, and we would so appreciate your help with any of these advocacy efforts. All right, one more announcement. I thought we only had a couple more, but we do have one more. The registration for the statewide meeting is now open. So the statewide meeting is going to be in Santa Fe on February 4th. And the link to register is here. And if you want to get a t-shirt and some other cool swag, make sure you register by January 3rd. And you can also join us every Tuesday at 12 for planning meetings for the statewide meeting. So we want this meeting to be something that is beneficial for you. We want it to meet the needs that you have. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your ideas. And we especially want to make sure that people who are not able to make it to Santa Fe are able to still attend virtually and feel involved and feel like they're part of the meeting as well. So that's every Tuesday, and you are all welcome to join. All right, so I will stop for just a second and see if anyone has any questions or if there's anything in the chat that I still cannot see.
The chat looks pretty good, just folks introducing themselves, and then I'm dropping some links about the things that you mentioned in the chat.
Cool. Thank you very much, Sam. All right. So I know people have been sharing their name and health council and affiliation in the chat, so I appreciate that. But also, if you want to come off mute or share in the chat, if you've ever applied for a grant from a foundation, or if you've ever received GRO funds, and we're going to talk about those a little bit later. But if you have applied for a foundation grant or a corporate grant, or anything other than a federal grant, what was the outcome of that and what was the grant? And so again, feel free to come off mute, feel free to put in the chat whatever you are most comfortable with. And I'll give everybody a second.
Oh, looks like Margaret raised her hand.
Okay, Margaret. Thank you, Geraldine. You can go ahead, Margaret.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was talking. I was on
No, you're
mute.
good.
Sorry. I did receive GRO funds this year. 2 years ago, I did write in a proposal for the junior funding, and it was based on mental health. We were at that time we were #1 on completed suicides, so that's kind of what I wrote in for. And it impacted our representative, where she kept the proposal, and unbeknownst to me, that we received the GRO funds this year.
Oh, wow.
So even though I highly recommend that, even though that you won't get it that year, just to keep the relationships going, keep conversing with them, keep the friendship going, because they're going to remember you, even when you're not seeking out for assistance. They're going to remember you. So I all I can do is say I recommend that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Margaret. That's actually something that I was going to talk about a little bit later, is just making sure to build and maintain those relationships, because you never know who could be a potential funder. You never know who could be, have some type of connection with the work that you're doing that wants to help support you. So yeah, that's a super great point. So thank you so much for sharing. Anyone else want to share, or anything else in the chat?
Pamela in the chat shared that they received some GRO funds previously. And then Sarah Bowman shared that ECHC is still working on applying for their 501c3, so they're having a tough time obtaining grants and donations. And the Health Council was on hiatus when GAP funding was available last time, so they don't have a ton of experience with it. So they're looking forward to doing it in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for sharing. And feel free. Oh, yes, I see another hand raised. Go ahead.
Okay, there we go. I'm sorry, it's me, it's Pam.
Hey, Pam.
And yes, we did get GRO funds, and it was amazing. And
Awesome.
I typed it in too fast without reading the funding and outcome. We got 75,000, and our person was Gail, and she is just amazing and so supportive of health councils that I have already started conversing with them to do this again. And understandably, it's like I explained to them, we'll take whatever you can give us.
For sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
keep the communication going. She's very correct.
absolutely. Yeah, just maintaining those relationships and keeping open communication and keeping them updated on the work that you're doing, and just letting them know, what you're doing with the funds and what you could do with more funds. That's super important. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
And then
Thank you, and I'm sorry it took me so long.
Oh, no, you're totally fine. After 5+ years, I feel like we're all still figuring out Zoom sometimes, so you're totally good.
Emily McRae in the chat shared that they received foundation grants from many different foundations for different, sorry, the chat just moved, I lost my spot, with different processes and are more or less structured. And that there's a free software licenses at the Albuquerque and Santa Fe Library to help you identify more funding sources, and how federal grants are huge amounts. Foundation grants can be smaller for immediate needs, around $5,000 or so.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great info. Thank you. All right. So anything else anyone else wants to share? I just want to be cognizant of our time. All right. Well, thank you all so much for sharing so far. And kind of like last time, when I shared one of the federal grants that the Alliance received, in January of this year, we received $25,000 from the Quorum Foundation. So that was for things like advocacy and support of health councils, and also to just try to impact positive change among the health and well-being in communities across the state. So like I mentioned, this funding began at the beginning of this year, and it's only going to go through the end of this year. But this grant has helped to provide funding, and it's helped to acknowledge the instrumental role that health councils provide at both the local and the systems level. And again, supports our advocacy, supports different fundraising efforts, and it's just been really beneficial. So that is one of the foundations that I'll talk about a little bit later. And so funding sources. As we know, funding can come from a wide variety of different sources for county and tribal health councils. Like we talked about previously, it can come from federal sources, it can come from the state, it can come from individuals, it can come from foundations. So each health council kind of has their own niche, their own specific things that they provide for their community. They each have different governance structures that impact the funding strategy that they can use. So even though each council might not use every funding option that we're going to talk about, it's still beneficial to kind of just be familiar with them just in case you want to seek out different types of funding in the future. All right, so this one doesn't have as much to do with foundation, but I just wanted to include it because it can be beneficial. Like several of you mentioned already, just having those relationships. So if you happen to have relationships with people who maybe have more money that they can offer to different organizations, those would be good people to potentially speak with about funding. So individual giving can include smaller gifts, which is technically listed under 25,000, but I feel like that's not that small of a gift. Larger gifts over 25,000, endowments. So if people want to kind of provide just something to kind of like a trust or something like that, and then estate gifts. So after someone passes away, they may leave money to organizations in their will, or they may leave non-financial things like land or different things like that. So I just wanted to cover that briefly. But another check-in, what are some examples? I know we've mentioned some that people have received funding from, but are there other examples that anyone can think of either corporations or other foundations that donate to nonprofits? And it doesn't have to just be health related. Now I'll fix my Zoom screen so I can see people's hands if anyone has a hand raised. All right. I do not see any hands raised, but again, feel free to chime in at any point. But I know in the past at my previous job, we received almost $1 million from the Walmart Foundation to do work on food insecurity in 9 different states. So I know Walmart gives a lot of money to nonprofits, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other corporations and foundations, but I just wanted to see if anybody had any examples that they wanted to share before I moved on.
Hi, Heather. Val here with the Alliance. I have one that comes to mind, and greetings, everyone. Banks, both the credit union banks, I think, tend to have a ceiling to like maybe $5,000, contribution back into community, whereas the corporate banks, Bank of America and other corporations have more financial bandwidth, and they are essentially mandated, right, in state national law to reinvest in local communities. So there's that opportunity as well.
Yeah, thank you, Val. And I know Nusenda Credit Union gives money to a lot of community organizations. I'm not sure exactly the amount, but I know that's a good one to look into. But so corporations, a lot of times they want to support nonprofits that kind of align with the work that they do. So for example, when my old organization got the funding from Walmart, they, obviously are a big provider of food and a big provider of just groceries and things for a community. So it was a good tie-in for them to help support food insecurity and help work to prevent that. So a lot of times a good component of corporate funding is that can either be restricted grants, but more often it's unrestricted giving, which, as we all know, is kind of the gold standard for fundraising. We all want unrestricted giving that we can use for whatever is needed. But like I mentioned, usually corporations choose nonprofits that kind of align with their interests, or can help them promote a specific cause, or can help them, look very altruistic throughout the community and kind of make sure that they're doing good work. All right. My Canva doesn't want to cooperate. Okay, so I just
Sarah,
included.
sorry, I
I'm
was gonna
sorry.
say Sarah also mentioned in her county that the oil and gas industry has been a good partner historically, like Kodiak and Dupree. I'm not sure that's how you say it.
Yeah,
no, you got it right. It is Dupree.
nice job, Sam. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, definitely there are a lot of companies like that that try to give back to the community. I know a lot of the tobacco companies a few years ago gave back money to the community to try to kind of help promote health. So a lot of things like that are good corporate funders as well. And I just included a couple here with some links to the fundraising pages for these. And this is just what these organizations give on an annual basis to nonprofits. And some of them also have like employee matching. They'll donate, if employees donate, say $1,000, the company will match it. So Google donates about $100 million annually, Microsoft 47 million annually, and then Walmart is 1.7 billion annually. So the 1 million we got from them doesn't seem like that much in comparison, but so like I said, all of those have links that you can click on to kind of find out more. And Walmart, I know we looked into that, and they are not doing their larger grants, they're invitation only, but they do have smaller grants that are community based that you can apply for. So I'm pretty sure that's the link that I included there. All right. And so I know we've talked a little bit about foundations already, but they can be either public or private. A lot of times foundations will collect funds from other sources and distribute them to nonprofits. And similar to corporations, they often support nonprofits that are doing work that kind of aligns with the work that the foundation is doing. All right. And I know we've mentioned a bunch of talking about building relationships with people in the community. So local foundations are good ways to start to get funding because they often they're in the community, they understand the work that organizations are doing in the community. A lot of times they know the people that are on the ground doing the work. So through networking, through community events, you can help kind of spread the word about the Health Council to these funding organizations, just throughout the community. And so I have a few listed and on Mighty Networks, and I linked it at the end of this presentation as well. We have a list of a whole bunch of funders throughout the state, but these are just a few that I wanted to highlight. And again, they're all linked here, so you can go and kind of check out and see what their funding process is and what their grant proposal process is. But the Santa Fe Community Foundation gives about $8 million a year. New Mexico Community Foundation is about $1 million a year. McCune is another organization that the Alliance has benefited from, and they donate about almost $5 million a year. And then Inc. Forum, like I mentioned, gets about $25 million per year. So, all right. And this is something else that we have on Mighty Networks, and it's also linked at the end. But I wanted to include a sample letter for foundational support, because when you are applying for foundational grants, sometimes you can just find a grant application and complete it, but often you need a letter to show that you're interested in applying for the grant. So I will not read this to you, but it's here for you if you want, just a template to kind of know what to highlight. You want to highlight the work that you're doing, when your health council was established, why you're seeking funding, what type of program you're interested in funding. Again, these are just a few of the things that you could potentially ask for funding for. So staff salaries, communication and outreach, being able to utilize different social media, printing materials, community events, different things like that, buying necessary supplies, kind of like I talked about before, the swag for Public Health Day, different things like that. Those are some of the things that you can ask for when you're requesting support from foundation. And then just your closing paragraph there. All right, and then there are some just operational or unrestricted funds that just allow nonprofits to allocate funds as needed. Some foundations offer this, and among foundations that do provide just general operating grants, the average amount is a little over $41,000. So it varies based on the foundation, but that was just an average. And so almost over half, so nearly 70% of foundations do offer general operating support to grantees. It may not be that full 41,000, or it may not be the full amount that you asked for in your proposal, but they do offer general operating support. All right, and so this is just some info that I found that I thought was interesting, just kind of some revenue sources for nonprofits. And of course, it's based on the nonprofit, like different ones have different services, but the biggest funding source for nonprofits was earned for private fees or services. So it could be like hospitals that are nonprofit, or other places that provide services. And then 32% received government grants or contracts. 9% of funding was donated by individuals, 3% by foundations, 2% by those endowments or bequests, and then a small amount, not even 1%, from corporations. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting breakdown of what those funding sources look like. So I just wanted to stop and see if there's any questions. I know I talk fast, but if anybody has questions or anything they want to share or anything they want clarification on. If not, I will keep moving along. All right. So this is pretty similar to what we talked about last time. So again, we do have a lot of templates on Mighty Networks to kind of give you guidance on getting started with applying for these types of grants, finding these types of grants. And of course, we're always available for technical assistance to help you look for grants, to help you figure out how you want to set up your application. But being prepared and understanding the interests of the funder, and kind of looking at what other grants they've given to other nonprofits is really helpful to kind of see if that particular funder aligns with the work that you're doing. Because if they do, then you're more likely to receive funding from them. And you really just want to apply to organizations that are a good fit with your health council's work. Because when you apply for funding, sometimes when you apply for funding that doesn't necessarily match up with what you're doing, it can put a lot more strain and stress on your health council and make you have to do more work. So none of us need more work. So just apply to organizations that are already supporting the work that you're doing and are going to be able to help build your capacity instead of make you have to do more work. And then that letter of interest that we talked about before, again, that's linked and it's on Mighty Networks, so you can access it. And when you're submitting that letter of interest, sometimes there are specific things they want you to include. Sometimes it can be really long. They'll want different, like they'll want a budget or they'll want different people who are going to be working on the project or different things like that. So again, just making sure that you're following all the instructions. And like we mentioned a lot already, just building relationships with funders when there are opportunities. And even if you've applied for a grant before and you didn't get the grant, it's still so helpful to maintain those relationships with those funders because they could come back later and they'd be like, hey, we found some additional funding that we didn't realize we would have, maybe some leftover piece of the budget that we didn't allocate. And so now we can give it to this foundation or this organization that we talk to and have this good relationship with. So you never know when something like that can happen. So even if you don't get the grant initially, it's still really helpful to keep continuing those relationships. And then submitting application, I feel like we covered this last time, but if anyone has questions, please feel free to stop me. But we have lots and lots of resources available, and we are always available to help as well. All right, and so for eligibility, a lot less strict usually than federal grants, because usually with foundations and corporations, they kind of have a lot more flexibility on who they're able to give funding to. And since a lot of foundations are private, they have even more flexibility. So they can support a lot of different types of programs. They can support programs or initiatives that might be more innovative, might be kind of more not necessarily as proven, that might not fit into those government funding restrictions. And then they can also fund like pilot programs or creative ideas that maybe necessarily don't fit into other types of funding sources, but are still something that would be good to fund and could become a really beneficial program. All right. So I know we've talked some about GRO funds, and I feel like a lot of you are already familiar. And I know we've already kind of answered the question on if anyone's received them from their health council. So we can go ahead and skip this one. But GRO funds are government results and opportunity funds. And so the goal of this process is kind of to test out pilot programs or new programs and ideas while also kind of keeping spending controlled. So not using a whole lot of money on a program that is new. The process allows legislators to meet with stakeholders and agencies within the community to determine how effective these programs are and also the long-term viability. And so these programs still have to go through the request for a proposal process, but we'll talk about it a little bit more. All right, and so the fund provides non-recurring funding for projects in state agencies, research initiatives and programs that support local communities. And the Government Results and Opportunity Fund replaced the junior bill process that used to be used by the New Mexico legislature. All right, and so it's a little bit different for representatives versus senators. So each representative is allowed to have a total of $480,000 that is allocated to different projects, and they can sponsor up to 3 different projects, and they can be spent over the course of 2 fiscal years. And so the minimum for one of these appropriations is $160,000. And then on the senator side, each senator receives $800,000 that they can appropriate to different projects, and they can sponsor up to 4 appropriations. And so the minimum threshold for these is 200,000. And similar to the representatives, this funding can be spent over the course of 2 fiscal years. And so I wanted to show a couple of GRO Fund projects from 2024. And I'm going to pull up my notes and let you know what amounts were spent for each. So for health councils, they in 2024, they received 160,000. Behavioral health, suicide prevention, mental health received 200,000. Mental health services for veterans also received 200,000. Financing for healthy food received 200,000. Food delivery for people who are homebound received 200,000, and then mobile medical outreach received 160,000. So it's encouraging to see all of these different health projects receiving some of those GRO funds. Right, and then these are just some guidelines on how to receive those GRO funds. There's a link here, and again, there's a link at the end of the presentation as well. And lastly, I just have some resources here. So like I mentioned, that list of funding organizations in the state, it's a pretty long list, so feel free to take a look at it. And there are a lot of foundations and organizations that support health throughout the state that you could check out. There's also information about GRO funds, and there's a template for our foundation support letter that's on Mighty Networks. And if you have not joined Mighty Networks, that's on a couple slides later. But does anyone have any questions at all, or any comments, or anything they like to share, hear more about?
Question, Heather, this is Jenny.
Hi.
Do the GRO funds, so I know that the junior House bill funds had to go through governmental entities in order to get funding. Like it couldn't go directly to a 501c3, which made it super challenging if you didn't have a fiscal agent that was supportive of trying to get funds, or if there were complications with working with a fiscal agent. Are the GRO funds any different?
They go through the Council of Government. So I do think it's different in that sense, but it still has to go through the Council of Government. So you can't just get it,
get it like directly.
Right.
It has to still be fiscaled, and most likely through some sort of a governmental agency or a school or a college.
Right.
Okay, just wanted to double check on that.
Yes. Anybody else have?
Can I say something on that?
Sure.
So like with Hidalgo County, it's actually going through the county of Hidalgo, which makes it super easy, and you just kind of give them a budget of what you intend to use those funds. Super flexible, especially if you have a great relationship with them. So yeah, it seems super easy so far, almost too good to be true. So, but working with your county on that is a great way.
Thank you, Margaret. All right, any other questions? All right, so let's see. So I might have some extra time for you all today to get some of your hour back. But like we mentioned last time, Mighty Networks is available, and all of this information is there in our resource library. And if you have not signed up yet, you can send Sam an email, and she will help you get set up. And all of our contact information. But if there's anything else, Val, Geraldine, Sam, anyone that I miss anything?
I'm sure you touched on this, Heather, but I just wanted to give a quick little update on the advocacy front. First of all, thank our health councils and advocacy partners for participating in the various ways that we advocate with you and on behalf of you. DOH is presenting at Legislative Finance Committee on Monday, my friends. So next week is literally the last window we have to call upon members of LFC, governor's office, Gina DeBlacy. She's the interim cabinet secretary of DOH. So she's going to be presenting on Monday. So if you take 2 minutes to send an email to members of LFC, governor's office, and Gina, or leave a voice message, you can find the scripts, the information, the contact information on our advocacy page. They always want to hear directly from health councils. Of course, you know, our small but mighty team is at the state capitol every day. We'll be there every day next week advocating. But every effort counts, and you know that'll be true as we were able to, you know, secure $3.6 million for health councils to continue their critical work this year. And that funding ends May 2025. So we're doing all that we can to make sure recurring optimal funding is established for county and tribal health councils. And so we're stronger together, my friends. So we thank you in advance for taking a few minutes out of your day next week, especially on Monday, and making those phone calls, sending those emails. So appreciate the collective effort. Back to you, Heather.
Yeah, and all of that info is at the beginning of this presentation, so all the links and everything are there. So we tried to make it as easy as possible to advocate, and it doesn't take very long, and it's super, super helpful, and we are very, very appreciative. So that is all I have for everyone, but if anyone else has anything they want to share, any wins for the week or anything like that, feel free to share. But otherwise, thank you all so much for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your time.